Welcome to my Switching, Routing, and Wireless Essentials course. This should be the CCNA version 7 curriculum. This is the second of 3 courses. Our next section is pretty much the same thing, except we are going to be configuring the enterprise level security, not just the basic level security. So we're going to do that by going through looking at how to configure the controller and how to get it to work with Radius. So again, PCA is going to be running our Radius and our SNMP. From there, it's also going to be acting as our AAA server. We're going to have temporary user credentials. It's going to be acting as our Radius server, so our users will be located on PCA. In a real world, that might be like Active Directory or some type of other directory service. We're going to use PCB as our management computer. That's the PC we're connecting and configuring everything through. So how do we do SNMP? Well, you log into the wireless LAN controller, go to Management, go to Setup SNMP, and you're going to set a trap receiver. And you're going to be setting up the IP address. So from there, we need to set up our Radius server. So to set up a Radius underneath security, you're going to go to Radius, you're going to go to Authentication, and then you're going to set up New. You're going to be setting and adding PCA to be that device. And you're going to do that through its IP address. You're also going to be setting up the password and the port number. The port number here is really important. Also, you're going to have to make sure to turn it on. Make sure that it has network users and network management both checked. And again, we have a lab walking us through all of the same steps just in case. Once you're done, we will actually apply it and ensure that it is functional. So again, how we do that is we try to connect between the wireless LAN controller and the switch. That will be set to a trunk. Between the access points and the switch, that will be set to a trunk. We have to make sure that the addresses are configured and turned on. So how do we configure a new interface on our wireless LAN controller? Really easy. We create the new interface, we configure the VLANs, we configure the ports and interface addresses, set up DHCP, apply it, and verify. So what we're going to be doing is we go to Controller, we go to New, we can set up our VLAN name and ID. Here we're setting up VLAN 5. They configure the port and interface address. On the interface, we will go to the controller, we will go to the interfaces, and we will edit it. Here the wireless LAN controller is on Gig 1 interface, port 1 on the wireless controller. That means the VLAN 5 interface address needs to be applied to that interface. We will go ahead and set the VLAN identifier and then set the appropriate IP information. We need to configure a DHCP server as well. So you have to give the address to where DHCP is going to be set up. You can have a primary and a backup, or you can set just a primary. It's kind of up to you. Verify the interface information, and then go ahead and click OK. Here we have a video walking you through the scope, but again, we're doing this as a lab step by step, so you don't need the video. So to create the DHCP scope, we will be going and creating the scope, naming it, verifying, configuring, and then verifying again. So to do that, we would go to Controller, Internal DHCP Server, Set DHCP Scope. We would then go ahead and name the scope. Once we have the scope, we'd be clicking on the name. From there, we could then enter all of the appropriate scope information. Its pool address, its lease time, its default router, its domain name, DNS, and important, make sure the status is set to enable. Lastly, we need to verify the address pool and lease time are appropriately configured. We will be moving on to creating our wireless LAN. So for our wireless LAN, we will be setting up a new wireless LAN, setting up a new SSID, enabling the wireless LAN for that VLAN, verifying 802.1x defaults, configuring wireless LAN security to use the Radius server, and then verifying functionality. So we do that by go to our wireless LAN tab, you would be going to the Go section to create a new wireless LAN. You'd be naming the appropriate SSID, and there will be an ID. The ID here is our VLAN ID. From there, you'd be setting up the appropriate general information, setting up channels, setting up name, ensuring that things like broadcast is set up. Once that is done, you'd be going to the Security tab. For the Security tab, you'd be setting up the appropriate WPA encryption, and since we're setting up Enterprise, you would be wanting to turn on 802.1x. That allows us to use our Radius-based server. Our next step would be our AAA server. That's going to be our IP address to wherever our Radius server is located. From there, we will go back to our wireless LAN main group, and we can see the information. That way we can verify the availability. And here is the Packet Tracer Lab, where we have all of that functionality being configured and set up. Lastly, we need to talk about troubleshooting. So the troubleshooting approach when we're doing this is it doesn't matter if the problem is simple or complex. Everything can result from a combination of hardware, software, connectivity issues, or people. The technician, must be able to analyze and look to determine root causes of the errors before they can resolve the actual issue. This process is called troubleshooting. Normally, the troubleshooting process is any sort of network problem should be a systematic approach. You don't just try things randomly. You try to break it down into simple steps, simple groups. That way you can test to see what is wrong and what is not wrong. Cisco has a 6-step process. Identify the problem, establish a theory, test the theory. If it's not, re-establish a theory and go back. Once we have tested a theory and we understand, we need to establish a plan of action, resolve the issue, and then implement the solution. The step 5 will be verify full functionality has been returned. Last is document the findings, actions, outcomes, everything in between. We want to make sure that everything is good. So for example, if the wireless client is not connecting, maybe we see if the IP config, are we getting an address or are we not getting an address? Can we ping anything? Can we manually set a static address? Does that work? Are we within range of the wireless access point? Is our connectivity really poor? Can we move our area? Can we get closer to the access point? Are we getting any channel issues? Are we getting appropriate channel speed? Next, we can ensure that the other devices are actually in place. Consider the possibility of maybe physical security issue. Are the devices powered on? Maybe we also inspect the links and the cables between all of the items. Maybe a cable was damaged, maybe a cable was removed. We don't know. So to optimize and increase our bandwidth of slower speeds, what we could be doing is looking at dual band routers. Maybe upgrade our wireless clients from the lower BG to N or AC. The goal here is to have the newer frequencies. Anything around 802.11n or better is appropriate. If you're using slower devices, it's going to make the wireless even slower. Also, we may split the traffic approach. Maybe we have both 2.4 and 5 separated. That way, if you're doing streaming, you connect to one, and if you're doing regular data browsing, you connect to the other. By default, dual band routers and APs use the same network name for both. You might actually segment the traffic and separate the names. You may also want to make sure that the hardware is up to date, so things like updating the firmware and whatnot. We have a lab troubleshooting all of our wireless issues. Questions, concerns, please reach out. Thank you.